but I don't want to go out of my, out of my zone and testify to something I don't have knowledge on.
All right, thank you. So just two questions, and one kind of piggybacks on what Assemblymember McDonald was asking you about. So in these situations where the water's not turned back on, or what seems to be a somewhat minor repair, what happens after they're condemned? Do they just wait 6 months and then get somebody else back in there? I don't understand. Is it just they were going to collect enough money for as long as they get away with it, and then they'll go back to using the property some other way? It doesn't sound like that would be the general the general way a landlord would act if they're counting on that rental for income.
Well, there are some properties that get placarded pretty long term until the code officer until the landlord decides they want to put it back into use. I mean, there are landlords that may buy a property for $10,000 or $20,000 and they've broken even after a couple of years. They may put them back into use and do just enough to make the code officer happy, or often they don't want to rent to that tenant who called the code officer anymore. They want to rent to a tenant who's maybe even more vulnerable.
Is that it? Is there any legal remedy in that situation where the person is essentially evicted because of the code violation and the order, and then they're out, and then we all know the issues, right? Then they got to find another property, security deposit, first month's rent, tried to deal with that and other issues. But is there any legal remedy for that tenant in that case? Can you sort of get around eviction laws by getting an order against you?
So you can, the tenant and the code official, and they can even work together, can file an order to get repairs. And my view is always by default that I want my client back in that house and the house repaired. And there absolutely are means to do that as far as, getting damages and relocation costs. Yes, that can be done. You certainly can bring suits for unlawful eviction, constructive eviction, negligence. And we do that. It's a huge drain on a practice that's focused on, representing tenants in summary proceedings and preventing evictions. It certainly can be done, but to me, it's not a solution.
Yeah.
The problem is the housing needing repair and making sure that tenants have the ability and the confidence to contact the code office rather than legal aid to do a prompt inspection and get the repairs.
So what you would be arguing for is some sort of standard, whether it be legislative or regulatory, where the implementation of the code is somebody would be forced to make the repairs. You're going to rent out, right? Like that's the end. It can't just be right to condemnation. It's got to make the repair. Certainly in the case of hot water or repair that, you might run into some situation, right, where somebody doesn't have the funds to fix the roof and you got to deal with that. But these minor repairs, I would assume there's some ability to do that.
Right, and we actually have landlords who contact code to get their own buildings condemned because they're tired of they don't want the tenant who's complained about the lack of hot water, so they'll say, oh, we're going to have the building condemned.
So last question, in my area, you could see situations like that. You could also see situations where somebody buys a house as an investment opportunity, chops it up in way too many apartments than are allowed by code or would be allowed by any semblance of safety, collects $500 a month in cash from a variety of people, sees how far they could go, and then we would hope somebody at some point would come in and issue a citation to that landlord. Now, of course, it's completely unsafe, but you also now have a whole bunch of tenants who are paying $500 a month who are out on the street. Any idea on what the proper remedy or what could be changed in our laws to deal with a situation like that? Because can't say you can fix up this attic to be safe. Any ideas?
Well, I would say that, right, not every structure can be made safe for the occupancy that it currently has. I concede that. The problem that we see is just this assumption that, placarding is, and the state has been very candid with me. They view that as just a sufficient outcome. They don't really care if whether the building is, capable of easy repair or not, or suitable for the occupancy that's, that's appropriate. I mean, there is a law that basically says that you can't collect rent unless you've gotten a certificate of occupancy for so I had mentioned that, a lot of the towns and villages that I serve don't have certificate of occupancy requirements, but there is a statutory requirement that if you're doing, my understanding is that if you're doing major work, if you're doing that, if you're cutting up the building, you should have had a certificate of occupancy and you shouldn't have collected rent. How do you remedy that without making the tenants homeless? Well, the landlord should be liable in a clear and rapid way.
Are they liable right now?
Under common law theory, sure.
But nobody's going to court under common law theory to.
I mean, I am, but there's only so much time. It's only, sure, I file cases, but again, I'm also, covering eviction defense in 2 counties, and I'm trying really hard to balance all that, and the tools are limited. But yeah, there are theories, but we do occasionally collect damages, but these are folks who are really, the folks that we work with, the people who move into those buildings are often just the most vulnerable tenants. Their situation is so unstable that, to participate in long-standing litigation is difficult as opposed to having the governmental infrastructure there to oversee the quality of housing that's being rented out with some consistency, is what they'd be looking for in my opinion.
Yeah, in some of these cases, the folks are undocumented, don't want to seek help. We've had situations in my county where there's rampant fraud. Folks don't even own the property, get the security deposit, get the rent, and then all of a sudden they're gone and the folks realize there was no apartment for rent.
I just had a landlord collect a security deposit from one of my clients for a building that had been condemned.
Well, thank you for your testimony and perspective here today.
I thank the committees for their time.
Next up and last on the list, we have Rabbi Justin Shwartz, who's the Vice Chair of the Rockland County Illegal Housing Task Force.
All right, well, I'll take this off. You're gonna get a homework book, textbook. Start with the first cover page. All right, just to let you know, so you have full disclosure, Ken and I are very good. I was told to behave. He knows I'm passionate. If you give me some latitude, I'm just going to give you history. We need more. If you want to know what's right with the system, where's the chief from FASNY? We need him. The gentleman behind him who testified about getting everybody in there, just do your job. David, who just testified before me, how are you going to sleep tonight when he has to put people out? So I'm accusing, and this is just in his home district. This is a statewide. I need justice. I never want to go to another FASNY parade to have this young man with 2 boys. He ain't coming home. I failed as the chairman to protect him and the tenant. The chief of that department, instead of being suspended like you would because he was the building code, not like him, he falsified a document, the Village of Spring Valley. You know what they did? They promoted him. He's still working on the job. The URL in that first part, please take the time and listen to the fire calls. That's the entire fire call. It's interesting, November 1st, we're 1 month before this fire that happened in 1958. I was meeting with Cardinal Dolan And I met the grandson of the Gallagher Insurance. Because nobody took the time, maybe we need 12 bodies and 3 nuns to make a difference. I have Mr. Hartwick, who's part of the FASNY team here. He's also a member of our task force. He's a wise man. He told me way back when, and I've been saying once we have body bags, then something is going to be done. Why wait? I think he's the greatest man we had in New York State. I'm the man in the arena, and I left his speech there for you to look at. Talk about trying to get things done. I'm just going to give you a timeline and trying to work with the system. On October 10th, 2012, Brian Tullison, who still is the Assistant Director for Regional Services, the Department of State, my former chair, John Krieger, we gave a list of 15 properties that are still in violation. It took till January 5th, 2015, your chair, to write a letter to the Secretary of State. He's been waiting since 2013 based on that letter. We still haven't gotten an answer from that. Let's move on to 2019. You're all familiar with Senator James Skoufis's hearing. I gave you copies just in case you didn't see it. You know, I'm not reading you any of these pages. That's long stuff, but that'll tell you what's wrong with the system. I want to bring your attention to the last part of that page, out of that report. It's the town of Ramapo that started the cancer. Still having those issues, lack of enforcement. If we had the chief who wants compliance, and if he doesn't comply, you shut it down. But what David is going through, that's the changing of the village of Spring Valley. But we have a good county executive, because we're going to work with 2 other departments, the Department of Health, Social Services, and Consumer Protection. Why the Department of Health? Because what David's concerned, what happens to those people? I'm concerned what happened to those people. Social Services makes the landlord put them up in a hotel. You want to abandon the property? We'll take the property because of lack of taxes. There is talk after this election that maybe the county will take away the property and give it to the tenants and let them fix it and own the property. It's not there yet, but it'll get there. Now comes the bad part. Let's go to the Rockland County Illegal Housing Task Force dated February 22nd, 2021. I wrote a long, lengthy letter. I gave back the 2010 properties listed because the New York State Building and Codes has a complaint form. I dated that. If you look at the dates, it's February 21, 21. 34 days before our fatal fire where we lost Jared Lloyd. I complained. I named. We had the first speaker about Nisbach. I have a difference of opinion in some of his people in his organization. Tell you who I named. It's on public record. You want to make a change? Make sure you fire John Nazario, Brian Tulson. They didn't get, my firefighter didn't get killed in that fire. He was murdered. Big difference when you say the term murder or you say kill. Ian Smith, Brian Downey, Wayne Ballard, still employed by the Village of Spring Valley. Then I get a response, April 1st. You guys can read this later. But basically, the chutzpah, the outrage, it's not part of Gary Travers' jurisdiction to discipline his own men. You said they go into stupid other places on a pool, but they won't discipline their own people that don't do their job. Now I have these cases, April 1, 2021. I got case number 7508, 7509, 7510, 7542, 7543. You know what they told me to do? I got to respond back to them with their code violations. Okay, I did that by April 29th, 2021. Let me ask you, gentlemen, when should I get a response? What do you think is fair to get a response? Ken can't answer that because I call his office at least once a month and say, where's my response? Today's date, November 1st, 2022. Not one response. Nothing. Also give you more on the document. We have a governor named Kathy Hochul. Fasney, she was there and she spoke and gave it to him. And I testify you today that she said if any firefighter need a problem, give her a call. I did better, I wrote a letter. September 13th, 2021. How long do you think I should get a response? Today's date, November 1st, 2022. Nothing. Assemblyman Fall, you were mentioning that tragic fire in the Bronx. Now, Bronx is not in my jurisdiction. We got mayors and we got other people outside. FDNY did a great job for what they had. That's a paid department. We're volunteers. Been doing it for 43 years. Getting old, getting tired. But do you realize we had a big fire on 101 Kennedy Drive? Fire doors didn't work either. Did you know it was the same landlord that did the same problem in your part? Now, talk about fines, political intervention. How many times have I spoken, both in testimony here? This is not the first, maybe my last, but it's not my first. They were in the car when they came back to look at it, and the reason they can't do the job, because the second floor in the executive chamber said no, don't do it. How about an engineer by the name of Erica Krieger, instead of condemning things, told them how to work around it. 200 Summit Park Drive had a false hydrant, but it passed inspection. The reason I'm here is because our community in Rockland County is more Jewish than not. The reason I'm there is so no one says we're anti-Semitic. That's a problem. It's a block. You tell me, you're all, and Ken Zebrowski, got to give him credit. It's not his district. Spring Valley is not his district. He came out, and there's schools. Every day, I got to pass the firehouse, and I got to see. I don't want to have any more signs and memorials. And you, this government, could have prevented it and chose not to. Not you, the people that you're supposed to legislate, going from the Secretary of State, Department of State, building the codes, town around Po, Village of Spring Valley, all have blood on their hands for this. So I ask you, can you fix it? You sure can. You got ICC codes. Don't make legislating codes. We got them. You want to, it's not the cost of doing business. I lost an entire development because it was systematically done to condemn it, to rebuild it, and took out a minority community. You guys are asking, you're in volunteer territory. Mr. Simpson, you're all upstate. Mr. Thiel, your Long Island's a little bit different, but we're all volunteers. Not to take away from the greatest fire department service. Where do I get the volunteers from? from the local community. If you take away, Mr. Cagle is doing the right thing. I'm proud. We used to say firefighters, Spring Valley. It's now the bomberos, because we have Latinos. Mr. Cagle, I'm sure, is dealing with undocumented workers that don't complain, because whatever they are living now is much better where they came from. But yet, he paid a price. We're supposed to come home. We hear about it, not to take away the FDNY. We started a task force because of Black Sunday. Tonight, on Channel 12, News 12 in the home district, and I'll give it to you. Unfortunately, maybe you'll get some money, and I could have put it in a more poignant with pictures and movies. There's a 30-minute documentary on what's going on, unfortunately, in our home district. 16 years she was covering, Tara Rosenblum was covering this story. Nothing changed. Nothing, except I lost Jared Lloyd. Now, it's selfish on me. He's a member of the fire department, but he also was a damn good technician for Altice. Who do you think I called when I had cable problems? I didn't call them. I called him. Cable hasn't worked ever since. Not the same way. And I'm sure others have done it. What do you tell his two boys? That's real. Talk about health department. Talk about other. I can go on and on and on. But I'm getting emotional, and Ken will throw me out. But I'll answer any questions. But I'm tired. I'm tired coming and testifying. And since 2019, for the town of Ramapo, nothing has changed. And you guys, in my opinion, can do more.
Thank you, Mr. Schwartz, Rabbi Schwartz, and I'll never throw you out. These are public hearings, so
Yes.
I know you're impassioned, and
I hope I did what you wanted me to do without going nuts. The reason he told me to behave, and let me give you the reason.
Yeah.
Okay? You asked about other things, Mr. Simpson. You're a contractor, okay? We have electrical board in Rockland County. We have electrical inspectors. Now, we have a mutual friend. He's his grandfather. How old is Al, his grandfather?
He's 97.
How many years has he been in Congress, fire department? I'm getting old. I know it's over 50.
I think it's 60 plus.
60 plus years. And he's still active. Unfortunately, they asked me to come to the electrical board meeting. I had Gordon Wren and myself. Let's put it this way. The gentleman over there and the gentleman over there whose security couldn't get me fast enough out of there. I yelled and I screamed because the electrical inspector didn't do his job. We had an unlicensed contractor that went ahead, put wires, not grounded, and because we get creative, we didn't put it in bad enough. We use trailers for classrooms that are not certified by the state education department. We are now buying cargo trailers. Metal, electric, with no ground. What do you think the electrical inspector did? Give a guess. What do you think he did? He passed it. Forget about that only, how many kids were in the trailer? Maybe 30. I didn't say there were windows either. 30 kids. He passed it. I had to leave, well, didn't really leave. They calmed me down a little bit, but as they say, I don't like to get grin-fucked. Pardon my French. In Jewish, we call it bullshit, but that's okay. That's why I was told to behave. I think I let you know a little bit.
Well,
now I'll answer questions.
I think all I said was, this is why we have public hearings, but my colleagues up here are here because they want to be part of the solution. So Don't yell at them. But
I'm not yelling at them.
but you can certainly yell at anybody else. So
And you're familiar.
obviously, you know, Mr. Schwartz, as my colleagues will see, you know, you and I have worked together on these issues for a long, long time, as have with the Legal Housing Task Force. And to bring your testimony back to some of the testimony of folks earlier, one of the things we oftentimes grapple with is, you know, how to affect policy changes when oftentimes what we're seeking for is a change in the culture and the enforcement efforts of specific people. And legislating that or regulating that can sometimes be difficult. And so sometimes what we look for is another entity, which in many cases is the state, to come in when it's clear that certain minimum standards aren't being met. And how do you get to that?
We did a good
Is
job.
interesting. So you give an example, you give 5 examples, you give 10 examples, and attempt to paint a picture. So just sort of like taking a step back, what would you like to see as the standards that the Secretary of State's Office of the Code Division would do?
First and foremost, get rid of the people that are there now. Second, give it to the county. Give it to the county.
So-
County's doing an excellent job now taking it over, and maybe if they fix it right, keep the same people. Take it out of the local judge. Take it out of the local courts. Let's have an administrative judge like they do in the city of Buffalo and outside in Rochester. I know you need legislative changes for that, but take it out of it. Take the 1 or 2 people, as the chief said, when word gets out they're doing it, then they comply.
Okay, so just so my colleagues know, for the first time in the village of Spring Valley, the Secretary of State's office did come down, take away enforcement powers, which they hadn't done before that we could really find, and give it to the county of Rockland. So you think that that would be maybe a model?
It is a model.
Statewide, okay.
Follow the model, as you asked, Assemblyman Simpson. Use the resources we have. There is no reason that even in Rockland County, you got to have part-time inspectors. That's, never mind. It's not making sense. Run it like a business. John McDonald ran a business. Mr. Simpson, you run a business. Government should run like a business, and it doesn't. So what I'm saying is you shared resources. One big change you can do for me legislatively, give the county of Rockland consumer protection to go after not only new construction. Do you know most of our new construction in Rockland County are not by licensed contractors? Why?
So I want to explore that just a little bit as my second question.
Go ahead.
How could we better get at unlicensed contractors? How could we possibly leverage the licensing boards? And I know it varies depending upon what county you're in the state, to help fix the problem.
Get the licensing board. It should be the same whether it's in Westchester, Rockland. Take the best practices. If I have this gentleman from Fasney who gives a damn and uses the stick and not just get compliance, because that's all they're saying. I just want compliance. Make my constituents goes away. Until what happens? That disaster. Then all of a sudden, oops. Who do you think is gonna fall? The guy that really was following orders, which we don't want to hear back in 1930s, but was following orders from his supervisor, the elected official. He's a good contributor. He's a landlord. Let's call it what it is. They're slumlords. And then put them on the pictures like Rockland County did. Put it on, make them. And the corruption. We all know what corruption does. This man has been working very hard since the day it is, and I am a pain in his ass, and I use a lot of things. But we don't have that information. We have other resources. Where's my Public Service Commission report on no water? On that fire that this man died, I'd say murdered. We didn't have enough water pressure. Listen to the tape. That's all we're gonna get. Yet 750 feet, there's a water tower. What happened? We have to do relays 2.5 miles to get water in a village of Spring Valley where there is hydrants every block. Hydrants weren't working, and they all know that. Where's my report how we can do a better job from the Office of Fire and Prevention? Where's Bill McGovern's report? Why is it taking? What year are we in? 2022? Fire happened 2021? Why is it over a year? It's no wonder it takes 6 to 7 months to fix a building. We don't give a damn whether we can do better. That's how you can fix it. Tell these people to do their jobs. And one thing I want to find out, and Ken, please tell your colleagues, how many times have I asked I wanted to meet with representatives from the Building of Codes, the Department of Governor? He's an assemblyman, a chair, and they don't answer him. It's documented in there, gentlemen. It's documented for at least 2 years this man didn't get it. When did they wake up? January 1st, 2015. An entire private school went up in smoke and flames and burned to the ground. Now they have a brand new building. They're in compliance.
Well, I think you may have gotten some attention today, and we'll continue to work together. I appreciate your passion. We certainly all mourn the loss of Jared Lloyd, who lost his life trying to save others and did save others.
He did. There was 112 residents.
Let's remember that.
And ask the Department of Health, where are they? So these are department and government states. You're on this chair of, what do they call, how government operations? Big questions. Where's their productivity schedules? What are they doing? 19 regionals that they don't have, they can't answer with today's technology? What happened to chats? Run it like a business. How many more residents? How many more firefighters? How many more policemen gonna have to die because the state isn't doing their job? I believe we can do more together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Schwartz. That concludes our hearing. Let me turn it over to any of my colleagues that want to make any closing statements.
Appreciate the battle.
Okay, with no other closing statements, I think you'd see from the testimony today and the questions of my colleagues that this is a really important issue. I want to thank everybody that participated here. I think there was a lot of details given, especially in the written testimony that was highlighted in the oral testimony. That gives us some things to work on, both legislatively, regulatorily, within the budget, certainly. And we thank everybody that participated. I'd be remiss to not thank all the staff that helped put this together, the folks in the audio-visual, central staff in the assembly, in both the majority and minority, who helped prepare us for these committees, and all the assembly staff and folks around here that helped make this place run. So thank you all, and that concludes the hearing.